This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
There is a simple, powerful antidote to the core problematic emotions that fester within your heart. Self-love. Self-love is the key that opens the door of consciousness transformation. Because of this, much of Simon's Self Salutation's work is rooted in connecting you to your capacity for self-love. Once you have tended to your negative feelings in this way, the Self Salutation then offers you a means to reestablish yourself in a healthy stance towards others and life. Valeria interviews Simon Timm. He is the author of An Introduction to Self Salutation, a mindfulness meditation series. Simon Timm is a mindfulness and meditation teacher and the author of the book An Introduction to Self Salutation, How to Resolve Negative Emotions Through Mindfulness Meditation. Simon spent most of his college years battling depression. Unwilling to spend the rest of his life on medication, he searched for another way of living with himself after college. The way he found was meditation. Simon moved into a Hindu ashram and spent 16 years as a monk. When he left the monastic life in 2011, he recognized the need for a meditation practice to help resolve the negative feelings within him, rather than just help lift above them. This prompted him to explore different modalities of personal transformation and ultimately to develop the self-salutation. He also earned a master's in religion from Yale at that time. Simon currently lives with his spouse, Allyson, in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Meet Simon at selfsalutation.com. Here's the interview with Simon Timm.
In your own words, who is Simon Timm?
Simon Timm. Who is Simon Timm? It's a more challenging question to answer than you would think. But I think ultimately I'm a seeker. I think in my heart of hearts who I really am. I'm a seeker. I'm a lover of God. I'm a devoted husband. I'm a former Hindu monk. I think that's a huge part of my story. I spent 16 years as a Hindu monk, and that shaped my sense of identity in really profound ways. A lot of the reason for that is that the tradition I was a part of and the meditation practices I was steeped in were all about identity. The question of who am I, and coming in touch with the true person that we really are, which is not as easy as you would think. I mean, I often ponder how just the idea of self-realization is kind of a weird thing. I mean, like, how is it that I have trouble realizing myself? It would seem to be the most obvious of things for me to realize. So I'm a seeker and a lover of God. I'm a survivor. I don't share that a lot, actually, or talk about that, but I'm a trauma survivor. I appreciate that that's something that you share and talk about, and that's what really moved me to share that. I survived childhood trauma, and I think that also shaped my path and who I am and the kind of waters that I ended up swimming in. And At the same time, I feel like a person with a bit of a burden. I've been given a lot in life, and I feel a need to share it, and so that's the mission I'm on right now, sharing the things I've been given with the Self Salutation. I'm an author of a book and creator of a meditation process called the Self Salutation. That's who Simon Timm is today.
Oh, wow. So much to uncover, to unpack. That's the word.
Yeah.
Ah, yes, I am a seeker. That caught my attention first. So, what is that you're seeking? Do you have a vision for what that is?
I'm seeking connection. I'm seeking a state of connection, a state of connection with other people. I'm seeking a state where I'm free from the negativity and the things that I see or experience in myself that I know at other times are less than I can be or aren't true to myself. I'm seeking, as I've mentioned already, I've done a lot of meditation, and in meditation, you can come to experience yourself in profound ways, in free, wonderful, profound ways. And then you lose that experience. And so I'm seeking those experiences again, and seeking a state where I'm in greater touch with those experiences throughout more of the time.
Wow, it's so clear to me. I have to say, I share those, let's say, those desires, those, I would say, longing. The word that comes to me is longing more than desire or seeking, even, but it's a longing, right? The more we get to know ourselves at all levels, the more we get to understand them, or how to navigate the experience called life to get to that, if we can, if possible. Of course, I love the way you talk about connection, being free from negativity. That's a big one for me and from, I think, most human beings. Another question that came to mind when I was listening to you describe yourself, it was being a Hindu monk. What inspired you to want to experience that, to become a monk in the first place?
Well, my search really began in my last year of college. I started to uncover my childhood trauma in college and recognize it, and went through tremendous depression, bouts of depression during that time. I was on medication. I was on Prozac. I was on lithium for some time. And I tried to get off it when I started to feel a little better after a couple of years, but couldn't find it. And then it became kind of an existential crisis as I went through day after day taking my happy pills, and they helped me. I'm not encouraging people to stop taking their medication if they're on medication necessarily, but it became a real existential crisis for me, where I began asking myself, why is it that I'm unable to be with myself or live with myself in some way? What is it that's making that? And I finally decided to seek out another way. And I went out, basically went on a quest, went searching, and tried to look at the world with clear eyes, tried to look at the world, tried to shed all of my prejudices and ideas about what was right or wrong, or everything I had learned, and just shed my trappings of growing up as a white middle class guy, straight guy in the Midwest of America. And so that led me on a journey in different corners of the country, and eventually it led me to the place that most seekers in this country go, which is California.
Yes.
And I ended up in an ashram in California, and I just had profound experiences with the meditation process I was learning there, and with the Bhagavad Gita, India's great book of wisdom. And it helped me. The teachings helped me. The meditation helped me. It gave me a way of relating to my mind in a different way, and really helped me to extract myself from a lot of the mental anguish that I was in.
Yes, I did read that in the book about depression while you're in college. And of course, I had very much an idea that was the reason. It's interesting listening to you to think about my own journey. I was just trying to think about, I was not really diagnosed with depression, but I was depressed, feeling depressed for a long time, anxious. I mean, there was the symptoms of trauma, they were all there. But I never did therapy, never taken medication. I was kind of self-medicating through working out, taking care of the body, and going really into the extremes of that, really. Not taking
It's a healthier path than I took, honestly. But yeah. I mean, we have to deal with it in one way or another.
Yes, right. So it feels to me in a way, Simon, that life seeks harmony, seeks balance. So it's as if we are life as opposed as having a life. We see that in the natural world, the plants, everything in the natural world operates that way. It's always looking to find harmony. So it really doesn't surprise me that would be the same with humans. As long as we are not in harmony, in a sense of being happy, peaceful at all levels, it will keep looking for it. It will keep driving us into those states. It feels that way. It really does. It might sound abstract for some people, but it feels real to me.
Well, and thank goodness for that. And I think even the beauty of life, just following that thread a little bit in my own way, is that even those moments when things seem to crumble, is really actually just an expression of life bringing us into the potential of some new state, some new unfolding, some new level of harmony.
Yes, 1 billion times. It just, even listening to you now saying in different words the same thing, it just like the body responds to it. I have a smile on my face, like, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. It just resonates energetically. Let's see. So the topic of our conversation, I want to just mention that, is self-love and self-acceptance. And the suggested title by you is Why Self-Love Beats Perfectionism Any Day. It's fun. That's a fun title. When I read it, like, yes, of course. And I had a smile and that's it. I usually make up my own titles, but this is just perfect. Not being a perfectionist, not coming for perfectionism. So let me see what question to ask you right away. So many. Self-love. What comes first? Self-love or self-acceptance?
I think the two are intimately related, and I encourage people on their journey to start with self-acceptance because it's a little more concrete or accessible oftentimes, as opposed to self-love. And self-acceptance is in many ways where the rub is, So we have, some people call it an inner critic. I use the term inner judge, because when I think of critics, I think of like Siskel and Ebert, chewing popcorn and in the movie theater.
Yes.
and what's going on inside my heart is something very different. It's like it's a judge with edicts, and it's a trial. It's not.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that learning how to accept ourselves is probably a great place to start. Ultimately, I think that acceptance can turn into love, but acceptance is a wonderful first step.
Yes, that has been my case, my understanding too, my felt understanding at the time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you define self-love these days, Simon?
I define self-love as a felt experience. So what I'm going for and what I'm working to help people experience themselves is an energy, is like a vibration. It's the kind of feeling that you have when you're in a warm embrace with someone that you really love, when your heart just fills up with all the positive energy of that love. And so what I'm really working to help people have is not just a momentary experience of that, or an intellectual idea of that, but actually learning how to become steeped in a felt experience of that. Love is a current. Love is an energy. Love is an experience that we can have. And the more we're able to learn how to experience that ourselves, for ourselves, to tap into our own wellspring of love, and to give ourselves that wellspring of love, the more we're able to, well, first of all, it feeds the great need that's driving us all. I had a teacher once who said something I find so powerful. He said that every action is either an expression of love or an expression of the desire for love. I don't know if you've heard that before, but
yes, I did.
Yeah, and I think that's so true. If we scrape away the subtext of so many of our actions throughout the day, and you really look at what's really going on there, you'll find that in one way or another, at the root of what we're really after is we're seeking love, or we're expressing love. And but the problem is, for most of us and most of the day, it's not coming out in a great way. It's coming out as something very different. And maybe it's coming out in terms of frustration, or like resentment for someone else for not loving us, or maybe it's coming out in terms of a fear of not getting loved, or maybe it's coming out as anger for not being loved, or maybe it's coming out as a fear about the future, that there's not going to that there's not love in the world for us, or that we're going to be on our own in some way, or out on our own, or in some negative state like that. And so at the root of so many of our problems is actually this need for love. But the amazing thing is, love is something that we can tap into in our own heart and experience for ourselves, and give to ourselves, and have by ourselves. And the beautiful thing is that when we learn how to do that, when we learn how to tap into our own well of love, well, it frees us from all the other needs and fears and ways of interacting with others and frustrations with ourselves and others. It frees us in tremendously powerful ways. And it also enables us to be there, to be a person with love for others around us who are all, groping in some way or another in a desire for love.
Yes, a billion times. It's very clear to me. Yes. Wow. One of your guided questions to me, you use a term that I never heard before. The question is, what is the relationship between self-love and self-confrontation? I heard confrontation. I never heard those words together. Self-confrontation.
Self-confrontation.
So,
Yeah.
Talk to me about that for a moment.
Well, so when I left the monastic life and I embarked on a more of a personal transformational journey into healing and into the therapeutic world, I came to understand after a certain point in time that first I started out, I was trying to change myself. I was trying to fix myself. I was trying to work on myself in ways. And what I came to recognize was that it was not necessary for me to change myself so much as it was to change my relationship with myself. And the first part of that is what I've been sharing so far, which is learning how to become my best friend, learning how to love and accept myself and be there for myself in ways that I had never been before or had never even thought of before. And in all the ways where I was critical of myself, I needed to supplant that with love and acceptance instead. At the same time, if there's a level at which you're not being honest with yourself, there's going to be a barrier in your self-acceptance. It's going to create a state of disharmony or an imbalance. There's going to be a challenge or some kind of a difficulty in your acceptance, because in your heart of hearts you'll know that, okay, there's an untruth there that's blocking that energy. And so the kind of self-confrontation that I think goes hand in hand with love and acceptance is learning to be really honest with yourself about what's going on in your heart, about what the feelings are that are in your heart. This is often the real rub comes with negative feelings. It's like we have negative feelings that we don't want to admit, we don't want to see, we don't want to deal with. We hope they would go away. And so the kind of confrontation self-confrontation that I do recommend and encourage and help people is finding the courage to see whatever it is that you need to see within your heart and to feel whatever it is that you need to feel. Oftentimes, it's some kind of a fear that drives us. Or sometimes, like we talked about earlier, sometimes there are buried wounds from childhood that we've hoped we would never have to look at or talk about or experience or expose ever again. But unhealed wounds, they don't just sit there. they have a way of beckoning us to find healing. And so the the other side of self-love and acceptance is really cultivating the courage for the ability to see yourself as you truly are.
That's a powerful message and an empowering one for all of us, not just to know, but to be reminded of. As I listen to you, parts of me are being reminded of that. It goes back to the relationship, as you mentioned earlier. So I guess the question that I wanted to ask you now is, when did you actually experience that shift in the relationship you had with certain parts of yourself? Was it a moment of recognition that you were in love with yourself, or in a sense, kind of bathing in your own love? Or this was a process, step by step, moment by moment, awareness and realization?
Yeah, actually it was quite the opposite. I mean, it was more like a moment when I realized, okay, the previous way of relating with myself is not going to work. The beatings will continue until the morale improves. That I think that's an inner psychology that we all internalize, actually. And I came to a point where my life as a monk ended when after I had been a monk for many years. I took on the project of opening a cafe in the East Village. And I was a cook. Everyone takes turns cooking in the ashram. People like my cooking. People, sometimes people would say, "Oh, you should open a restaurant." And so one day I did. and it ended up ending. It became a wonderful a failure for me, because it ended up exposing all the challenges in my own way of approaching spiritual life, and all the ways I was hiding from myself, because it was way too much for me to accomplish, and it became a massive struggle, a fiasco.
Yeah, you call cafe fiasco, right?
Yeah, it was a fiasco, and it tore apart the ashram. It was very rough, but it brought me to my knees, and the failure of that, and the resulting realizations I had around that drew me out of the ashram and into more of a realm of transformational work. But all of that happening, it brought me to my knees. I mean, it was like a sad divorce, leaving the monastic life. If you want to be a monk, you have to be married to it. I mean, it has to be like a profound level of commitment. And when all of that ended for me, I was devastated. I was in a university studying. It happened to sort of that's how I exited. That's how I left. I went did a master's degree, and there were times when I just had to kind of go rush into the library stacks, because I would just be overwhelmed with sadness, and I had to find a place where I could just be alone and have this wave of sadness go over me, and grief. So it was a very difficult time, and during that time, I finally came to a point where the weight of the failure was so burdensome on me that I realized in that moment, I realized that I can't beat myself out of this. I can't get through this in the old ways that I have of doing things. And at that point in time, I realized the only way to get through this is love. The only way I'm going to get through this is if I just learn to love and accept myself with all my shortcomings, all my flaws.
It's I can relate to that. Yes, very much. Right, over and over again, coming into the realization of love being the guide, being that, let's say, that steady, that powerful center, and just being connected to it. I mean, that message has never left me since I was a child, even. But then it's interesting how we get lost. We move away from that center. So this is one of the topics that I talk here on this podcast over and over again, just to get to understand this dance better of kind of feeling connected and then disconnected, feeling connected to love, to essence, to God, and then disconnecting. Is that, in the end, that's my question, really. Is that really meant to be? Perhaps it's meant to be that way, isn't it? In order to experience this, which we call life, then this is the dance. This is the movement of, duality, non-duality. Although, I keep that in mind, even not just in my intellect, but also in the ego, that only God exists. Only there's no two. I'm a student of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. So it has helped me a lot kind of to train the mind to see this relative reality as one interconnected tree. So there's nothing that's not really connected to essence, to God, to love, or basically everything is God. We are God. Everything is God. But not in the sense of the feeling sense of separateness. There's a felt sense that we are separate, but that's the illusion of it. So I guess I talk from the point of view of Vedanta and using these words that they speak that way, but it really resonates with me. I've been informed by this knowledge. So it's not easier for me to reconnect faster now, but it's also it's much clearer. It's so clear to me, the interconnectedness of it all. It feels like 2-3 billions, but it's not. and I know it's not. So there's this really felt knowing that everything it's okay, everything's fine. But it's still a dance, and it's still within the body-mind complex and the day-to-day living and all. It still feels like we are disconnected from time to time, but it is basically an illusion. So, from my point of view, so I'd love for you to comment on that, Simon.
Yeah, I think that we like to think in terms of straight lines or black and white lines or something like that, but we live in a world that's actually things go in waves. Everything is waves, not a straight line like that. And so there's not really an inside or outside, or there's an up and down and a back and forth, and there's just a natural flow in life. And so yeah, we go through periods in time where we do feel like we're in the low point and maybe pulled away from God or separated, and then we come back and we get to a point where we're more connected than ever, and then there is this dance. I like the word dance that you use for it, because we're fluctuating, going back and forth, in and out, and around and around. I like another symbol that I like is the symbol of the spiral. going inward, because a lot of times we feel like, oh, I'm going around and around in circles here, but no, actually you're in a spiral. So maybe you're covering similar ground here, but you're coming closer to the center. You're on your journey, and you're coming closer to the center, and we are coming in and out of states of connectedness and consciousness, but there is there's an ultimate thrust to it, which is union, connection, love, and deeper and deeper states of that.
That might be the dance that we are most interested in. This getting deeper and deeper into this reflection of pure consciousness, of God, and what it would be like to dance that dance, to have a body, mind that reflects that. Yeah, that's an amazing vision, though, and one that might take, for some people, they have said, takes lifetimes to learn how to dance that one. Wow. And that's the dance of enlightenment. That word, it's a word that I often don't use. And you use that word in your book, in the intro of your book. You have a quote by Carl Jung. So mentioning your book again is an introduction to the Self Salutation, a mindfulness meditation series. What a wonderful book, too. I love the way I have to say this even before the quote, the way you clearly, you kind of put together the book, the teachings with your own story, which makes very relatable. And it's more digestible that way, in a sense of connecting to another human being from compassion and empathy. So that opens the heart. And then now it feels like the mind becomes more open to teachings that way. But of course, as I said to you off record, I went and I didn't follow your instructions, and I went all over the place. I was all over it. Like, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. And everything's interesting. And then I didn't know what the beginning was, what the middle was. And that was complete, like everywhere. That was,
and I do, so I have a newsletter where I send out emails also. And I go all over the place with my newsletter also. So I do, there's a benefit to going from A to Z with it, but
it broke your own rule. Your own rules. Yeah. Good to know that too. Speaking of ways, right? Non-linear ways of navigating this reality.
That's it.
Oh gosh, there's something about, I think, I was in need of, I remember when I was really in need of being linear, of following step by step, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, when I was feeling the mind needed structure. And the mind needed help. I was so mired in so much confusion at that level of the mind that was needed at that time. I remember being very linear. And then once I became more, let's say, healed, different parts of me healed, then it just kind of, it became more like a flow. And I can feel like my whole being kind of moving, going through life, moving, not as parts, but as a whole, that there's no really beginning, middle, or end. There's no, there's no structure to it. So there's something about that. Maybe that's why I use the word dense. That kind of attracts me. And I choose to use that word for a reason. Going back to the quote. So you said, Carl Jung said, you're quoting him, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's a powerful quote, because the true one from the perspective of the mind, human experience, trying to reflect that more of that light, that pure light. So this is what it came across to me in your book, that's what you're trying to teach, really. So we can become more conscious of what's happening here, that it's in the unconscious. So it's not even subconscious, it's unconscious. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I have been asking that question for a while now. What's the difference between the subconscious and the unconscious? And Talk to me for a moment about that, Simon.
You know, so that's a great question, and I've wrestled with that quite a bit. Of course, what I came to conclude, or the way I use the terms, honestly, is a little bit synonymous. I take the subconscious to be things that we're not conscious of, but could be easily conscious of. You know, if we just, with a little bit of effort, become more conscious of them, bring them up to mind. Like, for example, maybe it's very common. It used to be very common for me. It's very common for most people, I think, to feel sort of out of sorts, but not know why. And in those situations, the why, there's usually a very clear reason why. Like someone said something to you, or you saw a bill, or something happened, that that triggered some kind of fear in the heart, and we at the time we think like, oh, I'm not going to deal with it, I'm going to move on, but we didn't shake it loose so easily. Or someone said something to us and we were like, I'm not going to let that bother me, but it did bother me.
Yes.
And so those are subconscious things. Those are subconscious things. They're things that are easily accessible, but things that we've just shoved a little bit out of sight. Whereas something in the unconscious, in my way of seeing it, is something that may take like coming to a very, very, very deep place within yourself to actually recognize. So if you'll permit, I'll give you a quick example. Yeah, so when I started to excavate the trauma of my childhood, what I gradually discovered was that there were all kinds of shades of the trauma that I had not really resolved or dealt with. By which I mean, as a child, I made certain decisions about how to respond to things or how to move forward in my life that took me years to unravel. Like, oh, I'm this way because when I was 4, this happened, and I kind of made a choice that this is how I was going to respond to it. I had was taken from my mother's custody when I was 4, and I went to a preschool at the time, and until a couple of years ago, I thought my preschool teacher had a special affection for me because I was special. And it was only a couple of years ago, actually, that it dawned on me through the course of some healing work I was doing, where I realized, actually, she took me under her wing a little bit. She did treat me in a special way, but she did that because she must have seen how badly I was hurting. I was this wounded 4-year-old. She must have recognized that. And the lesson that I drew from that, and it took me years of work to uncover this, but the lesson that I drew from that is, if I'm a little bit of a wounded bird, I will find love that way. And so there's a way in which I carried a little bit of a wounded bird nature to myself, because that was the way that I learned that I could get love when I was 4, and I needed it badly. so that, the unraveling of all of those kinds of ways that I had of being, etc., was buried deep in my unconscious. When I uncovered it, it was like frozen in time, but it took like a huge amount of excavating and just patient work to uncover that.
That's very clear. That's another insightful message, knowledge for all of us. Yes, how powerful the unconscious is. It drives our behaviors, our personality. It can shape our lives without our awareness. Gosh, that is, I can relate to that too. Oh my God, yes. Yes, I can very much relate to it. And I don't know how I got to access that information, but I did some of it. But I know it. I wonder if we get to get, access most of the unconscious processes before we die. We might, right, Simon, with effort and work.
Yeah. We keep going.
Yes, deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
So we're almost at the end, and I had so many questions. I have so many notes and questions here. I wanted to go back to the book and ask an open question, so I don't have to go through all my notes. There are way too many. I would love to meet you again, if possible, sometime in the future.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the book. So an introduction to Self Salutation, an overview of the intention and the purpose of writing this book, and what do you see as a vision, as a benefit to all of us who have access to it?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, the Self Salutation is a series of meditations that I teach, which fundamentally are meant to help us greet ourselves or change our relationship with ourselves, greet ourselves in a new way, change our relationship with ourselves. So, of course, a lot of people are familiar with the sun salutation. It's a series of stretches that people do in yoga. And the way the sun salutation works is you do one stretch, like a forward fold, and then you do a counter stretch, like some kind of back bend. And in this way, you gain strength, you gain balance, you come into a state of harmony. And so the sun salutation is a series of meditations that are meant to do for your heart what the self salutation is a series of meditations to do for your heart what the sun salutation does for your body. And so the idea is that we're stretching these opposite poles. We're going in one way and then going in another way, and in developing our capacity for these opposite directions, like the wave that we spoke about, or like life is full of paradox, and so, like I was saying, how self-confrontation and self-love are both connected to each other in a certain way, and the more we're able to be honest with ourselves about what's in our heart, the more we'll be able to love and accept ourselves. And the more we're able to love and accept ourselves, the more we'll be able to be honest with ourselves. And so that's one dynamic, the relationship with the self, that I teach in the Self Salutation, learning how to fill yourself with love and acceptance, and fill yourself with the courage of self-confrontation. And then also there are meditations that have to do with our relationships with other people, learning how to accept other people as they are, set them free, allow them to be as they are, who they are in their own ways. And the other side to that, or the other pole of that, is learning how to be assertive with other people in the ways that we need to. Learning how to set our boundary and stand in our power with people, and in a way that allows them to be who they are, but that isn't but is very clear about what our own limits and needs are. And then also there are a couple of meditations that have to do with life, our relationship with life. For people who are theists, you might think in terms of your relationship with God. But I like the idea of looking at life, because anyone who believes in God probably also has an idea about how they should feel toward God. And if you don't feel that way, then that's a very hard thing to look at and to accept and to confront. If you believe in God, So, but if you look at what's your relationship to life? What's your relationship to your life? How do you feel about your life? How do you feel about your past? How do you feel about your future? You can start to uncover a lot more meaningful kind of things that you might want to look at or work on. So so there are two meditations there as well, learning how to accept life and learning how to pour your heart into your life, with how to live your life with abandon. So so that's the Self Salutation. It's a series. There are 7 meditations in all. And the book is a way of introducing people to those meditations, to the practice, and to the process of excavating your heart in this way.
Yes, it's beautiful though. What a beautiful contribution to humanity. It really feels that way. It's you could have actually titled that "The Meditations of the Heart." But it really good. It's beautiful. I love I love everything about it. I have to go back actually, because I was all over the place, but I have to go back. The Garden of Vulnerability, that caught my attention immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you say, although the Garden of Vulnerability is no fun to visit, it is actually not so bad once you know what to do once you get there. In fact, it's a place of healing. I resonated with this so much. And so many other things. I love the way you talk about the syndromes, and they're funny because they're true. So it's like, wait a minute, that's something that I have been through and still go through sometimes. How interesting. So it's so relatable. And then, of course, the Self Salutations, the meditations are so beautiful. The one that caught my attention immediately, the 7. There's something about the number 7. I love that number, and the number 3 too. But I read it last night, the Hummingbird meditation. It made me cry. So it was a very something energetically, again, kind of touched me with that meditation. And I will read it more often. And I want to also mention that you do offer a free meditation download, and that we go to your website. And this is selfsalutation.com/free MP3. I'll have this on the podcast notes as well.
Great.
And I'll also have your website, selfsalutation.com. Thank you so much, Simon, for your presence in this reality, for being open to the being, to your, all the experiences that you have been through, the exploration, the inner exploration. There's something about being open to explore, what is here, that just changes everything. So Thank you so much for having that courage.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's wonderful to talk.
Yes. Thank you so much. I love doing this for a reason. So we'll be in touch again. Take good care, Simon. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Simon Timm and his work, please visit selfsalutation.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.